way too long. Um, quick agenda for today. It's really we're just gonna go intro. So who am I? How come I think that I know how to design liveries, and how come I don't think I'm perfect at it? And we all have our own method. What do you need? And so that means we'll go through the softwares and everything. The file structure, because this is really important in for Microsoft Flight Simulator, is how do you structure your files? Where does the flight simulator go get the information, all these kind of things. A little intro on 3D design, because this is really important, is what are UV maps, and why do we talk so much about UV maps, the files you'll need to do livery design, and then a full workflow on how we design liveries. Little intro. I am not a graphic designer. I am not a 3D designer. I've never been really formally trained in any of this. I'm just, a design enthusiast, meaning that, like, I think most of the people here, I've fucked around with pardon my French, by the way. I am also ESL. My first language is French. I tend to swear a lot. I'm really sorry about that. So it's yeah, I played around with Photoshop. I played around with Blender and all these different type of programs. This is not the moment where I'll train you how to use Blender. I will show you, or I'll try to explain what I do in Blender, but this is really not the goal. It's if you want to learn to 3D design in Blender, that's a complete separate topic, and honestly, you should do it because it's really fun, but it's something that you really need to look into on your own. It would take way more than an hour. We will, by the way, try to keep this to an hour today, and if we need, we'll have a follow up and follow up on another day. The best tool to train is, of course, YouTube. Is it for any kind of software? If you have a Photoshop license, use Photoshop, but otherwise GIMP. GIMP is really good. It's how to do different things in GIMP, how to do different things in Blender. YouTube is definitely the best way. And if you have never designed a livery, start by copying something else. Do not start from scratch creating, because I'm sorry to tell it to you like that, it will look like shit. It's really try to copy first, and that will, by copying other things. Is it an airline? Is it something else that you've seen around? By copying other things, it will teach you the design codes, or it will give you the best practices by default. You don't have to create something absolutely horrible and someone have the guts to tell you it is absolutely horrible. And Thank you, Daniel. And so yeah, start by copying, create later. The different tools you will need. I will share this deck with the different links, and so that you don't have to research that by yourself after. It's Blender 3D design software. It's not that we're 3D designing when we create liveries, but typically we use the 3D model of the plane to directly paint on it. So Blender is extremely helpful, and you will see that most of the workflow happens in Blender. Inkscape is a vector design. It's so it's I wouldn't even know the Adobe suite what the equivalent would be, but I think you can do vector design on Photoshop. I really don't know Photoshop that well, but Inkscape just allows you to basically create the forms or the different shapes that you'll want on your fuselage or on your plane. You'll be able to create these shapes so that you can paint them directly on the plane, and it's a 2D software, obviously, but it is really helpful to start doing your designs. Like, for example, if you want to do an American Airlines plane, having the tail design made in 2D so that you can stencil it on a 3D pattern, on a 3D model. It's also, and that you might understand better at the end of this workshop, some models, especially the premium planes or the DLC planes, do not come with a 3D model. And the 3D models are encrypted, so you don't have access to it. And so all you have is a 2D unwrapped version of the plane. And so you need to design on that 2D unwrapped version. First of all, it's a gigantic pain in the ass, but it is like the only way to do it then is through programs like Inkscape or anything like that. Sorry if you hear my doorbell. Amazon came by. And then Gimp, which is like the Photoshop of the poor. It's totally free. All three of these softwares are totally free. Free, by the way. It's really helpful to edit images, and in our workflow, we'll use it totally at the end to create the last files and compile everything together so that we can finally see it in Flight Simulator. The last two programs at the end that the last two programs that I use, Notepad++, there's multiple config files that will need to be edited, and then something called MSFS Layout Generator, which is like a small program that is just making your life way easier to create one file that is a pain in the ass to create at the end. The question is, how proficient should you be with each of these programs? Quite honestly, you should be able to use them. You should know the basics. But there's no need to be a power user in any of these, especially not Gimp, because like it's the same workflow all the time in Gimp. And the one where you maybe need to be a bit better is Blender, just to understand the logic behind 3D painting or painting on a 3D surface and then projecting it on a 2D image. Illustrator, thank you, Kevin. So, file structure. The file structure, and that is the same for every livery, is literally you have your community folder, and I hope that you guys all know what your community folder is. This is where you put all your add-ons, liveries, scenery objects, whatever. It's anything that you download on flightsim.to has to end in that community, or most of it has to end in that community folder. And so you have your community folder, and then you have the actual livery main, the root folder of the livery that is just the name. When I make liveries, I try to make it easy to understand, but this is the main TPC 172 livery. So 172, G1000, GN I'm not sure, and TPC. So there you go. This is the root folder. In that folder, you will find two files, layout.json and manifest.json, and it's these files will need to be edited for each livery. Then you go, and at the end of the tree, you have a model specific folder, and that model specific folder, for the few planes that have a ski floater and a wheels version, that's the moment it starts to be important. But for today, we're just gonna think about every plane has only one version. So it's here, it's for the 172, and it has wheels, and nothing says it here, but it's just, this is the wheels version, under which you have three things: model, panel, and texture. Panel we will not touch today, but model and texture. Model is a config file to say like, okay, this is the livery for this plane, and in case you can't find a file, this is where you go get it from the default model. And then the texture folder, which is where all the images go, and what we're going to work on today. Keep in mind that anything you put in these folders will replace the equivalent file in the default on the default plane. So it is important not to put too few files, but also not to put too many. So for example, if you mess up a configuration file of the plane, you might end up with your G1000s not working, or things like that. The goal is always to replace as few files as possible when you design a livery, just to replace the ones that you really want to replace. Do not start adding too much information in there. In case to create this template, first of all, where is my Chrome? Chrome is here. Yep. First, I uploaded a whole bunch of templates that are pre-done, and by that I mean, like, for example, if we go in the Xcub, this is what you would upload by renaming different things, but it's this folder that you would upload in your in your community folder. All these come from what was it, Delivery Project or Delivery Mega Pack or something like that. I don't exactly remember, but it's all these come from other people. I didn't put them together, but at least it gives you a base that then you can edit and play with, and that's what we will do this time. UV maps. So a little bit about 3D design. Of course, I have no idea how you guys are comfortable with 3D design or not. So I have to at least cover the minimum we need to understand for today. It's UV maps. So UV maps are basically the unfolded version of a 3D model, unwrapped. So it's, if we go in Blender, it's really easy. So here you have a cube. You see a little cube, and if you unwrap that cube, this is how it is unwrapped. So you have a 3D shape unwrapped in 2D, and that 2D unwrapped thing is a UV map. So for a cube, it's really easy. You only have 6 faces, so fairly easy. For a plane, it becomes a bit more complicated, and that's the moment you start having these things, these files, these UV maps. You have different colors here on the plane because typically what designers do when they create a 3D model of a plane is that they slice it in multiple things so that they can unwrap it in different files. So in blue we have the wings, and that's the file that is surrounded by blue. In green the tail and the landing gear, and in red the body. So that's for 172. Some planes are more complicated than that. Typically the bigger the plane, the most complicated it becomes. Some planes are way simpler than that. Like for example, the TBM 930, it is one file. It's almost everything is together. Where for the 747, the default 747, I still haven't been able to really understand what is where. So it's some files are way more complicated. Some planes are way more complicated than that. But mostly you'll always find 3 sections: wings, tails, and body are it's usually split that way for all the default planes and most of the DLC planes too. If there is any questions about what UV maps are, please go now, because after that I will start talking about UV maps and expecting that you guys know what it is. The files you will need in order to know, or in order to start designing, it's the 3D model of your plane. And today we're basically covering only planes that have existing 3D models, and that is most of the default planes in the sim, and a few DLC ones. I would recommend to go on flightsim.to, download another livery for the same plane, just so that if you don't have a template for that plane, you have a template from an existing one and you edit the existing one. And then a paint kit. And paint kits are basically people put together some basic UV maps, some basic files, like blank files for each plane. And you can go on flightsim.to and research TBM 930 paint kit. And what it will give you what if the plane was all white? Where is there metal? Where is there, like, it will give you a base layer of volume to your texture, because if you don't add these details, where should it be? Where should it be dirty? Where is there exhausts? Where is there, like, all that kind of stuff that you then burn on top of what you've designed? It's otherwise your design becomes really flat and kind of ugly. So it's pretty important to have these paint kits. Because they will add more depth and more details to your final work. The different steps in terms of designing, it's decide the plane you wanna design, and today I'll give you the choice between 3. Clean your model, and we will see what I mean by clean your model. Find or create, once you're really comfortable, find or create a design, and start creating all your base files in terms of when I was talking about the tail for American Airlines, like this is not something you want to design in 3D, and I'll show you why. This is something you want to design in 2D and then stencil in 3D. Then you paint the whole thing. You finalize in 2D because it's never perfect, so you always have to do small little touches, and then you compile everything together, and you put it on flightsim.to if you're really proud of your work. Otherwise, you just enjoy it for yourself, because as a reminder, it's when you have a livery, you are the only one who can see it, as long as you're the only one who has it on your computer. People don't see liveries that they haven't downloaded. So the models I propose today, or the planes we can work on today, are 172. Let's see, 172, a Cub, or a TBM. And I would like you guys to tell me which one you want to see: the 172, a Cub, or the TBM. Daniel is going for the Cub. Joey, TBM. Pretty sure someone is going to say 172. TBM. Two TBMs. Two TBMs, two Cubs. It's we need one last voice. 172. Okay. Nick, you're the one deciding. 172 it is. There we go. Okay. So when I tell you, so let's open Blender and load up. One thing you will need, I think I mentioned it in the slide, but I didn't talk about it. Yeah, you need you need an add-on on Blender when you to load Microsoft Flight Simulator models. It's that add-on is linked, but it's once you have the add-on, it allows you to import. So you go File, Import, and MSF, blah blah blah, GLTF, GITF, I'm not sure. And you need to find your Steam folder. It's really easy to find once you know where your community folder is, because if you go to community, your community folder, you go one down or one up to official Steam. If you have the Steam version, it's for all, like if you downloaded it through another source, all this information is available on the web. But I think that once you have found your community folder, it's really easy to find the official folder. And so you go official. When you download it from Steam, you have that Steam folder, and these are all the original planes and original liveries that are by default, or the DLCs if you bought them in the marketplace. But we're going for a 172. Typically, when you have multiple versions, you see livery. I mean, I'm not sure if you can read that on your screen because it must be fairly small. But always take the most basic one. So here we're gonna take a G1000. So it's a 172 SP AS 1000. That's what we're going. Double click Sim Objects Airplane. I'm taking the wheel version, and then you go in Model, and you have all these files in there. You have the interior files and the exterior files. Interior, I mentioned interior, and when it's not written interior, it's an exterior file. And then you have numbers behind them that go from 1 to 6 for planes that were well designed. That is the different level of details. 0 to 6, by the way. You always want to take the smallest one, so the 0, because that's the most detailed design there is. So we take the 0, give it a second, and there we go. And we have this plane, and this plane doesn't look amazing right now. There's a lot of stuff on it that we need to clean out, because on these you have the icing layer that is like designed or mapped where it's supposed to go. You have movement layers. You have all kind of shit that needs to be taken out, and so we're going to do that. It's when I say, that's what I mean by cleaning your model. So the first one, it's typically the icing, and you see it, and every time you have like that weird effect, it means that there are multiple layers at the same spot. So it means that something needs to be taken out. So up, I take this out. And another way to see, like, am I deleting something I'm supposed to delete or not, is that when you click on a layer, so let me cancel. There. When you click on a layer, you can, if you go on the properties tab in Blender, you can see the title of it. And the title is Fuselage Frost. So as you can imagine, you don't need that. It's here it's fuselage. That we might need because we're designing on the fuselage. This is livery official fuselage. That is the the shapes you can see on every single 172, the default ones. That too we don't need. We want to completely redesign this. I'm just going for it. Everything that looks like it doesn't belong. And at the end, also, you want to take out everything that you don't want to paint. So typically, your wheels, you don't want to paint your wheels, so you're going to take them out. It's also your windows. You don't want to paint your windows. We take them out. The inside of the plane, that's the hitbox inside. We don't want to paint that. Anyway, it's not mapped. The lights, all that kind of stuff, and you have the different things that are linked here. It's everything that you don't want to paint, you delete. That goes for objects that are available like that, but it also goes for objects that are already inside the 3D shape. One of my pet peeves in livery designs is that people tend to paint over the antennas, paint over the instrument, paint over the static port, all that kind of stuff, which typically are never painted on a plane. It's you don't paint over a radio antenna. That wouldn't make sense. So it's really up to you how detailed you want to be, but like I tend to clean my models really maybe not well, but at least I try to be thorough. So for example, how do you clean these antennas? If you don't know how to use Blender at all, a bit is going to be a bit of this may sound weird, but if you've already played a bit in Blender, then you know that this is the object mode. If I push on tab, I go on what is the name? Edit mode. There we go. Edit mode, and that gives me the details of the object I have. So I'm working on an object. Shift H makes that I only see that object. I go in edit mode, and I want to take this antenna out. So push on 3 so that I select faces, not vertices. Sorry. Up. Side view. There we go. It's what I typically do. I start selecting, Shift plus select, and then if you push on Control plus, it will extend your selection. Like you push on Control plus multiple times, it will extend the selection of the part of the object you just selected. So up, pushed on Control plus a few times, it selected the whole antenna. Up, delete vertices, and at least the antenna is not there. If I push on 3 from my numpad, I can see up, side, boom. You have to be, for example, here I made a mistake. I selected also part of my wing, and so if I start doing Control plus here, it will extend to my wing. If I delete up, I lost part of my wing. We don't want that to happen. So you have to be careful when you do it, but it's the Control plus thing, like tapping it, like selecting part of your object, then tapping it multiple times, making sure you have the whole object, and then continuing that makes it fairly easier to clean your model. But so there are antennas to clean. There is anything mechanical. So, for example, these hinges, for lack of a better word, the flap hinges, I think. I'm not sure if that's the right English word. Anyway, the flap parts have to be deleted. Even the rings here of your tie downs, I tend to delete because like no one would paint that. It's just a piece of metal. Your exhaust, I delete my exhaust too because no one will paint an exhaust. Um, the engine, if you see the engine inside, and that starts to be complicated to select everything. That is also the moment where that's why I'm saying that you need to know Blender a bit better, because like you need to be comfortable switching from transparent view or material view to understand how to hide part of this. So for example, if I select all this and then I push on H, then I hide it, then I have access at the things that are behind it. So yeah, it is fairly useful and helpful to understand Blender better. Cleaning a model typically takes me, for an easy one, takes me half an hour. For a really hard one, takes me multiple hours. And the 172 has a lot of details. It's a really well-designed plane, so we're not going to clean it fully today because I've already done the work. But it can take a really long time. And this is at the end the plane fully cleaned. So you see I took the air filter out, I took the engine out, the windows, anything that was inside, any mechanical part, because like the bolts and everything are also modeled in 3D. Took all these bolts away. It's took I think so. Oh no, I didn't take the almost everything away. But so that it's all the parts that I don't want to paint. Now this model is clean. There's no more lights. There's nothing left that can be a pain in the ass later on. So now comes the what do we paint? We have a model. We cleaned it. What do we paint? And it's I showed something to Serge some time ago. I changed my mind, and it's we have two options today. It's either American Airlines decided to launch 172s under delivery, and I have the American Airlines file ready, and or something completely different, which was for the Alaska Gold Rush, where I slapped something together real fast. Again, I will need your opinion or your vote on which one do you want to work on, Alaska or AA. Of course. Oh man. Yeah, but that goes away from what I said at the beginning, which is when you first start, copy, do not create. Thank you. Anyway, we will add elements of both. But so the first thing I do when I decide, like, okay, American Airlines is launching 172s, training planes, I suppose. Is okay. I need reference material, and that is literally Googling. It's finding the highest definition possible for the logo, finding all my references, deciding what I want to do, okay, so this is my reference plane, and I will need to transpose that to 172 as best as I can. It's we have multiple colors. So this is the actual tail design, which is like it's gradients and stuff like that. I decided to make it easy for today. The blue will be one blue, the red will be one red, white is white, and the gray that their whole fuselage is in is that gray. Is that gray, and that's I like to keep my colors as a reference in my design file as much as I can. Why do you have these two logos? It's because one is on the left side of the plane, the other one is on the right side of the plane, simply. And And so you need them oriented the right way. And then the tail that I redesigned or kind of copied. And so this is all, and that's why I'm saying when I say vector designing allows you to design shapes the way you want and allows you to create shapes. And that is more visible on this file, where what I did in this plane is that I was there, okay, I have a 172, and that's literally, this image is literally a screen grab, a side screen grab of Blender. I have this image. What do I do? I'll do this going there, and I'll do this little flag thingy going up. And this is all different shapes that I created. I'll do this little flag thingy, and I'll put the part of the Alaska flag on top as a touch, and the bird over. We'll see once we design, but the bird on the fuselage too, and then TPC charters, because I fly only charters, and apparently I never design liveries for the club. And then Alaska Gold Rush, because that's what we're doing right now. And too bad Eric is not there, because I finally passed him in cargo. So you have all this, and this is just a 2D thing put together, an idea. It's a concept board. I up here, if I go back to my American one, I have my tail, or at least the main design that will be on my tail. I have the logos. I will export all these images and make sure that they're available when I need them. And so if I go up, I have all my base images, and then I have all the images I will need. That is, there we go. All the images I will need: my left logo, my right logo, my tail, my colors if I want to have my palette available. And that's the pictures we'll need for now. So how does this work? I have this plane, and I have the fuselage and my tail, and typically I tend to, everything that will be painted together, I tend to join together. So it means rather than make multiple objects of it, because right now this is one object, this is one object. You get my point. It's if they're separated, whenever you try to paint them, you will have to continue. You will have to paint each of them individually. So what I typically do is that everything that will be painted together, I join. So it's selecting everything and then Control J, and it makes it one object. Now when I move it, hits forgot these, but I actually like that we forgot these since they're a crappy piece of plastic. So it's one object that we can paint at once. You have Layout tab and Texture Paint tab. If you go on Texture Paint, you see that this whole thing is now purple. And purple means that there is no texture available, or there's no texture mapped on it. So the first thing I do is that I look, and after I select my object, go on Texture Paint, and I looked at, okay, these are the different texture that are actually on this plane right now. So we have tail landing, rivets metal, wings, fuselage, livery 2, and forget the one. That's just because I messed up in windshield. I messed up one design at one point, but these are the files that matter. Rivets metal, we don't care about these. That's like, we don't want to change the color of rivets anyway. They're barely visible on MS, like when you're live in the simulator. And I think they take the default color that they're on top anyway. So the first one is fuselage. And how does it work? You select fuselage, click on plus, base color, and here you decide what type of livery you're gonna make in terms of definition. We want a 4K. We want a 4K livery. We'll keep it full white right now. And yeah, that's it. Okay. So now the body of the plane has a texture, and forget I'm doing that. That is just there. The body of the plane has a color and has a texture. Where do you see that texture? You're like, okay, great, it's white. It's here in the drop down. It tells you like, okay, fuselage base color. If you load it, it is a white square because right now everything is white. If I painted the plane black, it would outline all the pieces that have been painted black, and that's your UV map. If you remember, it's if you remember, like here, if I select part of my part of the model, it will show you like, okay, this part is mapped here. This, if we just want this door that is this square is mapped in this square, and etc. It's we have everything black up. There we go. But we don't want a black plane. We want a plane that is the colors of American Airlines, right? So you can paint two ways. You can either paint directly on the model, or you can paint directly on the UV map. It's a few things that I recommend doing before you start painting. It's change the color of your cursor, make it orange, except if you want to paint in orange, but change the color, make it orange so that you don't lose it, especially on a white thing. Change the fall off of your cursor, because if right now, if I paint in black, you see you have that shading, or the fall off allows you to have a crisp line. When I painted black up, it's a crisp line. And the stroke, that is the different types, the different ways to paint. It's we will go over these when it's necessary. So right now, like I told you, you have different ways of painting. You can either paint like this, directly on the model, and right now only painted the left side. So if we want symmetry, you have a symmetry thing down there, symmetry X. By the way, the red axis is X, green is Y, and the blue that we do not see is Z. So it's when you want something to be reflected on each side, it's X up. When I paint, this is great. It's supposed to paint on the other side. And that, I suppose, is because I joined my files. Okay. Sorry about that. That's a moment. Up. It's because I joined everything and I didn't look at which one was the parent object. So the default plane, middle plane of the plane was not the right one. Anyway, details. So let's start this again. Fuselage up, up, without merging everything. White plane. There we go. So X, and I want to paint up. When I paint one side, you see it paints the other side too. So that's one way of painting. The other way of painting is going directly and paint in here. You see my cursor is white. I immediately lose it. Now it's orange. I see it kind of better. There we go. You can paint directly in here. And so if I paint directly in here, it will paint on the 3D model too. Now, because not everything is like it's the UV map of the plane, it's not everything is at the same spot. You see, like if I select this and the door, for example, the door will be mapped around here. The back of the fuselage will be mapped here. And that is the whole plane. But it's everything is mapped a bit everywhere, so it is hard to paint directly on the UV as long as you don't have a model, and so, or as long as you don't have a reference. And one thing, if you remember in the AA thing, is that we have the fuselage is basic gray. And so it's C7, the code is C7, C7, C9. So what we're going to do is that we're going to paint this plane the right color, C7, 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 C9. And so I take this. Again, I have two ways. That's the paint the whole area. This one was a paintbrush. Two options. I can either drop it on my model or drop it on my UV map. If I drop it on my UV map, the whole square will become gray. If I drop it on my model, it will only change the color of the things that matter to us. And so we have now a gray plane. And at least if you want to edit or to paint directly, you have a reference of where you can paint and what you can change. So if we go here, you see it's my tail. And this is the bottom of my tail, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, there you go. So you have the top and the bottom of the tail that are there and available. There is no symmetry when you paint on the UV map. There's only symmetry when you paint on the 3D model because this has no 3D data at all. It doesn't, like, it's just an image. So there's no way to have symmetry here. Anyway, let's continue to the other things we need. If you remember, if we go on this, we had one for the wings, one for the body, one for the tail. So we need wings and tail. So I'm gonna up base color for the wings. It's a 4K, it's a 4K livery, and C7, C7, C9 up so that everything is the same color, and the tail the same. Again, up C7, C7, C9. Everything is gray. Okay, so we have the base of the plane, and yeah, don't even look at that pink part. Actually, we have to. It's we have the base of the plane, and it's that's how it's yeah, that's how you make the base color. Now we want to, if you remember, we want to paint that tail like this. So what are our options? We could paint it directly. So I could decide that, okay, what is my color code? E60507. I can decide that I want to E60507. I want to paint my thing directly, so I zoom in, F to reduce your paintbrush, and I'm really precise. I'm gonna paint this. Oh, actually, it's not too bad. But no, that's impossible, even if you have different stroke styles. So you have the paintbrush, then you have a line, which is the two that you're gonna use. Line is you draw a line, and it draws a line. It's even with the line to be that precise with that cut and all that kind of stuff. It's impossible. Painting by hand is really not doable or an efficient way to do it. So what we're going to do is that we're gonna load a texture. You go totally at the bottom, new texture, open, and there is the stuff that I created for from my Inkscape file. You remember, from research of all the everything and researching the color schemes, and now I have that tail that I created. So I load that texture, and I go up here, find the texture part, and in mapping I say stencil, and you see that right now it doesn't look right because it loaded it as a square. So what you do is that you click on image aspect, and at once it's the image you created. But you have a stencil now that will make your life way easier. So if you right click is to move it, shift right click to size it, control right click to rotate it. Yeah, everything is right click. The thing is that when you zoom, it doesn't scale. So you will soon understand how annoying that is. But it's up, we go. And if I remember well, A planes, it's not exactly aligned. So another thing that you need to realize is that livery design is not precise. When any plane you look at, when you zoom, you will see errors. And like, for example, yeah, right now I'm eyeballing how I'm doing things, and but it works, and you will not see the difference when you load it in the sim. It's one thing. Okay, I have that stencil, and now I can paint over that stencil. The thing though is that you want to paint with a white paintbrush, because if you paint with another color, it will add that other color to your stencil. But so up, I make it bigger. I have mirroring so that it paints the other side too. It's still on stroke, so let's go back on dots. And this can become can be really taxing on your computer's performance, by the way. So another thing is that we don't need to be too precise at the end, because if you remember these planes, we have to cut that design basically in the line of the tail. And then, yeah, that's, for example, when you stencil with mirroring over a surface that is facing you, but also vertical, and the vertical, like, it starts calculating about, like, okay, what do I do with this fin, for example, God, I can't find my words anymore. Anyway, this part of the plane, that's the moment your computer will start like having a few issues. As a reference, I have a 3090 in my computer, and it's not happy when I do too much at once. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, there's one thing though, is that I'm putting a 2D thing on a 3D model, and it doesn't discriminate in terms of what is facing me. So if I click here, when it will decide to print, anytime now. There. If I click here, now you see it started coloring this part too. And so that is a bit annoying. We don't want that. So it's one thing we need to do, or something you need to know, is that it only paints what is visible on your screen. So we have to find a way to make the tail not visible, or this part of the tail not visible. So how do we do that? It's I typically create a copy, only show that copy, and I will delete from that copy all the parts that I don't want to be painted. I always keep my original the original shape, but selected part of it, Control plus. We'll select that's all the rivets, by the way. All these little squares are the rivets, and they're a pain in the ass, but I guess you need them. Up, up. Yeah, I got it all. Up, delete. And yeah, it's I removed the empennage, or I'm not sure how you say that. And now, at least when I paint, it's not there anymore, so it's not painted. But you're gonna tell me, yeah, but you're copying a copy of the model. Yes, but when you copy an object, it keeps the same UV map as the parent object. So you're basically always painting the same UV map, no matter how many copies you have. And you can even copy an object and paint it in a totally different spot. It will still be the same UV map. But so, okay, seems about right. We got the whole tail. And you see that, for example, is the moment it's painful. I'm zooming in, and this stencil didn't scale. Let's say I find an error. I have to refine the exact zoom back and hope that I didn't make a mistake and hope that I didn't move, because then, okay, shit, I moved. And I need to reposition it anyway. So I didn't make any mistake. So we have the tail, and it's all good. Now, as we said before, we have to cut part of that design. We have to cut it and make sure that we have the up. We have the same American design. So I put the gray, the default gray, as my reference color, and here I will use lines. And what I do for that is that I zoom in a bit, select here, and try to keep the right distance. And yes, it cut it in the right spot. So that will be our reference. If you want, this can go. We see that here it's not done, and yeah, that we see that here it's not okay. So we can reload that texture and putting it in a different spot, kind of aligning it right. And I will just redo all this so that now I have enough material to cut. Boom, boom. Go back, do it again. Line. Do it again. And there we go. So now we have the tail. But there are a few things that we still need to fix on that tail. For example, the bottom is not okay. And here the whole center is not okay. And where do we find these? So this one is, and if you don't know where to find something, you just paint a big red dot on it and you see where it is on your UV map. But so it's here that we need to fix that gray line, and the bottom is something that we'll paint directly on the plane. But so here, this is an example of when to paint directly on the UV map, because it will make your life easier. It's up, I take the white, and I go 1, 1, 1. You know what? I'm gonna make, because we need the blue too. So I'm gonna first do the blue. And when I talked earlier about all the little errors that happens when you paint in Blender that you need to correct in Gimp later, it is all these dots everywhere. You will see that no matter how you paint, it will never be perfect. You will always have to correct the files. I tend to become completely anal about it and lose way too much time correcting every single pixel that I can see that is not the right one. One example of that was for the H145, where honestly, Serge, I thought I was gonna have a seizure by seeing so many pixels all the time. But it is like that's something that you need to correct at the end once you are done. So white, we go back, white. Anyway, the goal is not to be perfect today. The goal is to explain, but you see that there's still some issues, so we can also do a bit directly in this in the 3D view. It's anyway. You correct all this, and the bottom, the way we're gonna do it is that first we need to take these out, and that's the stenciling on curved surfaces, stenciling on it like it's not super precise. And then here, typically when I need to join two things like that, I do line, I select, and then I go what is approximately the middle, and join them like that. So and now that it's done, we can finish painting. Make sure that you do not paint anywhere where you don't want paint. and here it would be white. But up, whoa. There we go. So that is that. We have the tail. Now it's the same process for the logo. It's literally I go in texture, I load, open, open logo, left logo. It's up, go here. Image aspect because it was all weird. And I make sure that here I deactivate the mirror because because otherwise it would it would be weird. So up, American is gonna go here. Boom, boom, paint it real fast because we're running late. And there we go. We have the American logo that is on it. And because I said that we would do one thing of the other livery, it's if you go TPC, it's here, up this little flag, this little thingy, it's you can paint something on the wings. So for example, we're gonna move it 90 degrees, and this time our mirror is on the y-axis. Okay, great. Yeah, it's on the y-axis, right? Yeah. Yeah, Z paints it. Okay. Not sure, but that's something I don't really have time to get into right now. Not sure why it doesn't paint the other side, but certainly I messed up something when I cleaned my model. But so you have the logo, and now it's a matter of exporting all this. You're happy with your design and you want to export it. And so it's here in images. You say save as, and then where you designed it. This is your tail landing. So tail landing base color. Save it like that. You take all the ones that you edited. Fuselage base color. Up, image, save as. Fuselage base color, and that's the two that we edited, if I'm not wrong. No, wings. Wings are gray. So wings we need to save also. Wings base color. There we go. Got it all. It's all exported, and we don't need. I mean, I don't have a logo on the right side, but you should do the same process on the right side. And so you go here and here when you up. You would need to like see that you're exactly at the right spot compared to one side, compared to the other, all that kind of stuff. But so it's exported. We do not need all that anymore. We are all good with all this. What we need now is Gimp. And that's the moment your template files become important. And so if I go on, where are my templates? If I go on my template file, template 172 template, that's it. Copy it, put it in my community. Where did it put it? There we go. I will rename it. Rename it. I rename everything that has template in it. So it's a demo. There we go. So it has these. Oh man, I'm really sorry, but it's 5 o'clock, and I really have to go get my daughter. I thought that we could cover it in 1 hour.
Well, we can do another session later on to kind of continue where we left off.
I think that it's actually a good stopping point because now this was all about designing, and now we're really about exporting. So we have the base images, and how do we export them, and how do we make them available in the simulator? One note though is that this is my workflow. It's not perfect. It's not the only one. It's like you have to find your own. There are multiple resources on YouTube that explain to you how to do livery design. Honestly, most of them suck, just because it's not as easy, or it's not as straightforward as they sometimes say it is. Um, but it is still like worth looking at them and taking a few. I know that I linked one to someone one day who was doing a 737 design. I think that's the best one I've found until now. Um, it's really, don't hesitate to look at them, but it's again, you have to do your own thing. Try my method and adapt it and make it your own because it can go really different ways.